All right, so this is the song Enough. And what you'll see is I have written Roman numeral versions of the number system next to the chords. Now we're in the key of A major. I know on the keyboard earlier I was showing you everything in the key of C major because it's easy, because that's literally the piano keyboard shows you the key of C major in terms of white and black keys. But in terms of the alphabet, it's easier to think of number system probably in the key of A. Pretty easy. There's a couple sharps in here, 3 sharps you got to keep in mind, but shouldn't be a big deal. So I've written out Roman numerals next to these chords. So since we're in the key of A is 1, and there you see it right there. So like the 6 minor is the next chord, and that's F sharp minor. Okay, and reason I use Roman numerals is because I can delineate minor with lowercase, and I can delineate major with uppercase. So that's what you're seeing here, and I'll play it, let you hear it a little bit, but it's, you know, all of you is more than enough for. And that chord progression is going to repeat, by the way, on the chorus. So it's going all of me, 1 major, 6 minor, and 5 major, and 4 major. And then when it gets to every need, it changes, it climbs up. It goes 1, 2, 6, 4. And every need, 1 major, 2 minor, and you said is 6 minor, 5 minor, and D major is 4, and then it goes to 3. Notice it says 1 over 3. Remember I talked about 7 earlier, and I said instead of playing a G, like in the key of A, you'd play a diminish, which doesn't work. You know, that's an awful chord in the key of A major. I said you do E over G sharp, which is 5 over 7, right? Okay, that's the modern contemporary worship and secular sound, okay, not the diminished. Diminished chords are valuable, by the way, and they're used, but they're used in other ways, either as what we call passing chords, or in jazz they are used as sometimes number 7, but you don't usually hear that in your average non-jazz tune or non-blues tune. The 1 over 3 is a common substitute for the 3 minor chord, okay? So that's what you're seeing here with the word love. Instead of going with your love, that's a 3 minor, okay? There's one note in there. It's that C sharp note, or G sharp note in that chord. That is given kind of a problem. We want this sound with your love. We want an A instead of a G sharp over it. So that's really an A over C sharp instead of a C sharp minor. So that one, so the other thing you want to start doing is you want to substitute the 3 minor with 1 over 3. Except, unlike with the 7 chord where I told you pretty much ditch the 7 diminished and think of it as 5 over 7 all the time, with the 1 over 3 as a substitute for 3 minor, I'd say this happens maybe 70 to 80% of the time in worship music, okay? There's a 20% chance it might still be a 3 minor, okay? Especially when we want to yield a little jazzier sound. But in this case, every time that 3 comes around in this song, it's going to be a 1 over 3. And I write it out here in the chart as 1 over 3, but in my mind, I abbreviate it as 3. But that's something I'm not telling you to do until you really learn this stuff well. And then you'll start to do that. So with your love is, and for all I have in you, 5. Notice the 5 suspended. As you learn to think in terms of numbers, you'll start to learn and expect certain things get suspended and some don't, and certain don't. And the 5 sus is the most common place to suspend a chord because it builds tension. Because listen to the tension on the suspension, and here's the non-suspension, what we call the triad. Okay, but that suspension really, and it pulls to 1. It's more than enough. And see it, and that's where it goes. It goes to 1. Okay, this chord progression 1 6 4 or 1 6 5 and 4. I would, in my mind, I'd call that a 1654. Okay, it's like a street address, right? 1654 chord progressions are fairly common in worship music. So this is not like you're only going to see this in this song. You're going to see it a lot. 1654 and 1465 chord progressions are very common. 1465 would sound like the key of A, 1, 4, 6, 5. That's I'm trading my sorrows. I'm trading my sorrows, right? That's an example. The Blessed Be Your Name is 1564. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be the name. But I'm in the key of C. See, it's harder to recognize it. These patterns are the same. It's the same chord progression. That 1564 as other songs you might find. Like, as I said in this one, I think they use a 1564 also. I lost where it is. But anyhow, these chord progressions just keep coming up. And there's just certain things you'll see in music when you think in terms of numbers that you will not see if you're only thinking in terms of letters. So to get yourself thinking like that, initially you might want to write a chart out like this where you write the numbers out next to the chords, or at least think in terms of two worlds. Don't just think letter. Think letter. Ask for every letter you play, what's the number that goes with it. And that's what I did. I didn't literally write everything out like this, but that I start thinking in two worlds, and eventually you start thinking in one world more numbers, and that's where I transition to. This chord chart doesn't have the letters; it only has numbers, and that allows me to transpose it. So if I need to play the song in the key of G, you wonder how I can transpose on the fly. It's because I can think in terms of numbers. The numbers don't change in the key of G. It's just the letters. Okay, so in a key of G, it's all of you more than enough. Oh, it's still a 1654, so it's still a 1654 chord progression. Doesn't matter. I could be in the key of C for maybe an alto. And all of you is more than enough, right? And see how fast I'm doing that with no letters in front of me? You can do this too. It's not, it's not rocket science, but it just requires some passion and some discipline and some faith. The faith is that, hey, if Greg can do it, I can do it, because Greg's no rocket scientist. The passion is the love to want to do it, and then the discipline is to actually sit down and endure it when it gets a little hard, and it's only going to be hard in the beginning. And that also, faith helps you with that endurance, right? I'm not just talking about music. I'm talking about life. Let me show you something on the bridge. I talked about borrowed chords. I think this song has a borrowed chord in it, and I want to show it to you. Might be easier to go back. Let's see. It does. More than all I want, more than all I need. Actually, I'm wrong. It doesn't. I'm thinking of another Talman song. That chord progression for the bridge is 1 major, 4 major, 5 major. And by the way, when you memorize 1, 4, 5 is major, 2, 3, 6 is minor, 7 is 5 over 7, 3 is commonly 1 over 3. You don't have to think like I just expressed it. I said that bridge is 1 major, 4 major, 5. You just say this: the bridge is 1, 4, 5, 4, 3, 4. That's and that's a long number sequence. Usually it's shorter, like 1564, 1645. So you can start to abbreviate. By the way, when you think in numbers, you start to see patterns. And one common pattern is the 2 and the 5 tend to be around each other, usually right next to each other. Oftentimes 2, 5, 1 is in music. There's 2, 5, 1. You'll find tons of 2, 5, 1s in music, and you might see a few in this song. 1, 4, 5 is very common. The 4 and the 5 both want to push back to a 1 chord, so you'll see them grouped together. And we're seeing that in this song as well. And again, you kind of learn these things by thinking about them. All right, I've written all these rules here, these little patterns you notice in music with the number system, like the 2-5-1 here. It's a common thing you see in jazz all the time, by the way. This song ends on the 4 chord, and that means it makes it hang. Okay, at least the way I end it, and the way that Tomlin ended it, like you end it with this chord progression down here at the bottom, where it's doing, 1, 6, 5, and then 4. I'm sorry, 4. It does that. Sorry for the accidental bad note. It does. That's specifically what it does, and it ends on the. It's a 4 chord for the most part. I've got that weird note in there, don't I? But that's a hanging way to end the song. If you want to end a song and make it hang or unresolved, end it on the 4 chord. It's very common, and this helps you as a composer when you say, hey, I want to end my song and make it hang. Well, if you know music theory, you know the number system, you'll know it's done on the 4 chord. If you, not just as a composer, but as a player and a listener, you know, hey, this song ends in a way that doesn't sound resolved. Well, you can pretty much guess it's the 4 chord. So you don't have to analyze it deep, okay? When the song ends and it's resting, which most songs end resting, it's gonna end on the 1 chord. We could rest that ending. We could do 6, 5, 4, 1. See, that 1 chord is where everything lands. So the 1 chord is the resting point. It's called the tonal center, if you will. So